The night of the Slit-Mouthed Woman, the streets of Shinjuku, Tokyo, were unusually quiet that night. The hum of neon lights reflected on the wet pavement, and a light drizzle clung to the air like a ghost's breath. Hana pulled her scarf tighter around her neck, clutching her bag as she made her way home from work. It was later than usual, and the silence in the usually bustling city unsettled her. Her footsteps echoed in the narrow alley she chose as a shortcut. She hated this path, but it was the quickest way to her tiny apartment on the outskirts of the district. The sound of her heels clicking on the wet concrete was steady, a rhythm she focused on to keep herself calm. But then, she heard it. A second set of footsteps. She froze. The sound stopped. Hana glanced behind her, scanning the dimly lit alley. There was no one there, just the flicker of a street lamp struggling to stay lit. She laughed nervously at herself and shook her head. "Get a grip, Hana," she muttered, quickening her pace. Then came the voice, soft, almost playful, like a whisper carried by the rain. "Am I beautiful?" Hana stopped in her tracks, her heart hammered in her chest. She turned slowly, her breath caught in her throat. Standing a few meters away was a woman. She was tall and slim, her long black hair spilling over her shoulders. She wore a beige trench coat, the collar turned up to frame her pale face. A surgical mask covered the lower half of her face, common enough these days. But something about her felt wrong. The woman tilted her head slightly, her dark eyes unblinking. "Am I beautiful?" she repeated, her voice tinged with something that sent chills down Hana's spine. Hana forced a nervous laugh. "Yes, you're beautiful." The woman's hands rose slowly to her mask. "Even now," she said, pulling it down. Hana's breath hitched in her throat. The woman's mouth was torn from ear to ear, a grotesque, gaping wound held together with jagged stitches. Her teeth, sharp and stained, gleamed in the flickering light. The eternal grin carved into her face seemed to widen as she stepped closer. Hana stumbled backward, her bag slipping from her shoulder. "I have to go," she stammered, turning to run. But the woman appeared in front of her, as if she'd materialized out of thin air. Hana gasped, her mind reeling. "Am I beautiful now?" the woman asked again, her voice dripping with malice. Hana remembered the stories, the urban legends whispered among her co-workers and friends. The slit-mouthed woman Kuchisake-Onna. If she answered no, she would die. If she answered yes, she would become like her. Tears streamed down Hana's face as she tried to think. She had read somewhere that distraction might work. Her trembling hands fumbled in her coat pocket, pulling out a packet of mints. "Here," she cried, tossing them toward the ghost. "Take them." The woman stopped, her grotesque smile fading into confusion. She bent to pick up the mints, examining them with a childlike curiosity. Hana seized the moment and bolted, her feet pounding against the slick pavement as adrenaline surged through her veins. The alley seemed endless, the world a blur of shadow and light. She could hear the faint echo of laughter behind her, growing softer, as if the woman was toying with her. When Hana finally reached the main street, she collapsed against a lamppost, gasping for air. She looked back. The alley was empty. The ghostly woman was gone. But Hana knew this wasn't the end. The legend of Kuchisake-Onna wasn't just a story. It was a warning, and she had barely survived her encounter. That night, Hana locked every door and window, keeping a knife under her pillow. But even as she drifted into an uneasy sleep, she couldn't shake the sound of that voice. "Am I beautiful?" The question echoed in her dreams, and she knew, somewhere in the city, Kuchisake-Onna was still searching for her next victim. The Curse of Mae Nak's relic, The rain drummed softly on the Phra Khanong River as Dr. Niran, a young archaeologist, oversaw an excavation site. His team unearthed a golden pendant, its intricate carvings glinting in the light. Villagers watching from afar whispered warnings, urging him to leave it. An old man stepped forward, his voice trembling. "It belongs to Mae Nak. If you take it, she will follow you." Niran brushed off the warning as superstition and pocketed the pendant. But as they returned to Bangkok, strange things began happening. The pendant seemed to move on its own, and security cameras in the lab captured faint whispers and flickering shadows. One night, a researcher screamed, claiming to see a woman in white standing in the corner of the lab. Niran dismissed her fears until another team member was found dead, his face twisted in terror. The whispers grew louder, and Niran began dreaming of a sorrowful woman cradling a baby, her voice haunting him. "Where is he? Why did you leave me?" Frightened, Niran sought help from a Jarn preacher, a historian who specialized in folklore. Preacher's face darkened as he listened. "You've disturbed Mae Nak," Preacher explained. She was a devoted wife who died during childbirth while her husband was away at war. Her spirit refused to leave and waited for him. When villagers exposed her as a ghost, her love turned into vengeance. The monks bound her spirit into sacred relics, one of which is the pendant you found. Preacher warned Niran that Mae Nak believed he was her reincarnated husband, and unless he returned the pendant, her wrath would grow. Niran dismissed the claim as nonsense until she came for him. One night, Niran woke to find Mae Nak standing in his apartment. Her beauty was otherworldly, her sorrow palpable. "You promised me forever," she whispered. Terrified, Niran stumbled back. "I'm not him. I'm not your husband." Her face twisted in rage. "You are mine," she hissed, her form contorting into something monstrous. Shadows consumed the room, and Niran barely escaped. Desperate, he returned to Preacher, who prepared a ritual to appease Mae Nak. Under the cover of night, they returned to the Phra Khanong River, the pendant glowing faintly in Niran's hands. Monks chanted as the air grew cold, and then she appeared. Mae Nak rose from the water, her figure veiled in white, her eyes blazing. "You took him from me," she cried. The ground trembled as her sorrow turned to fury. She conjured visions, trapping the group in their worst fears. Niran saw himself reflected in the water, not as he was, but as Mae Nak's long-dead husband. Mac. Realizing her pain, Niran knew he had to make a choice. One, sacrifice himself to bring her peace, or two, destroy the pendant and risk unleashing her full wrath. If he sacrificed himself, Mae Nak's rage softened, and she embraced him one last time before fading into the river. Niran's body was found the next morning, lifeless but at peace. If he destroyed the pendant, her scream erupted into a violent storm that tore through the night. Though the monks subdued her, several lives were lost, and Niran was left haunted by her final words, "You'll always be mine." In the end, whispers of the incident spread, but the truth remained buried with Niran and his team. Late at night, near the Phra Khanong River, some still hear her voice carried by the wind. Where is he? The tale of Mae Nak lives on, a haunting reminder that some loves are too strong to die.